Hello and welcome. Today I'm back in the little fisherman's hut because there are some tourists around my usual spot. Here is nice and private. Nice place to meditate in the shade. And actually that brings me on to my first question. It's actually the last question I most recently received, but as it leads on nicely, I'll begin. So let me read it. It's quite amusing. Firstly, Happy New Year. Of course, this is probably, I suppose, the peak, maybe, of tourist time in this part of the world. But even so, it's very peaceful, quiet where I'm staying in this part of Sri Lanka. Not much disturbance or anything with regards to the New Year or the Christmas festivities. Everything goes on as normal, as usual, in my ordinary routine. But Happy New Year as we enter the convention of 2024 here. It's probably not 2024 where you are yet. We enter it a little sooner, being that we're that nearer or that further around the globe. So as you can see even from that, it's by no means a real thing. It's just something we use, like our names for convention. Anyway, where's this question, this amusing question? Oh yes, I love this channel, but isn't it difficult to meditate with all that traffic on the New York State Thruway right outside your door? No, it's not difficult to meditate with the New York State Thruway right outside my door. What causes us difficulties in meditation is, in fact, the New York State Thruway that is right inside our head. It is the thoughts of the past, the thoughts of the future. It is what we call in the Pali language the kilesas, sensual desire, wanting things we haven't got, and ill will, not wanting things that we have got. For instance, not wanting the sound of cars, tuk-tuks, buses, strange vehicles with no name, tractors, lorries, and everything like this thundering by. We may not want that for meditation. Now, of course, if we begin this practice of meditation when we start anything in our lives, when we're learning, we want to make the environment, the conditions, as supportive as they possibly can be, which is why we have meditation centers, or why we set up in our homes a little area with a zafu maybe cushion on the floor, some incense and a candle. We can shut the doors, ask the flying gliders above our heads to leave us in peace for a little while, because we are going to practice samadhi. We're going to be meditating, and often that's sufficient to scare the whole family out of the house. They're going to say, oh well, she's gone strange again, doing all of this mystical stuff, so we better get out of the way quickly. And you're left in peace and quiet, which is of course very much a support and conducive to the practice of meditation. But after some years, many years probably, in most cases, certainly mine, one develops the ability to, and this is the goal, to be able to bring the mind's awareness, conscious awareness, to the meditation object despite the surrounding circumstances. After all, we're not looking to meditate by use of external factors. If our meditation, if our ability to enter into absorption on a meditation object is as at first it will require this support, but if it remains dependent on more or less sensory deprivation, which isn't easy to achieve in many circumstances. I'm seemingly in an idyllic situation, but look at this. I mean, I've got these things flying overhead. If I go into the forest, there will be all kinds of animals making noise. India, there's nowhere quiet in India. It's a huge country, but unless you go right up into the mountains, but even then you'll have Tibetan monks or people sounding horns and drums and festivals going on. There is always disturbance, but none of this is important. It's the disturbance in our mind that is the obstacle that is hardest to overcome. Once we're able to ignore what's going on outside, in fact not ignore, but just don't go out to it, just know it as hearing. This is sound, I'm hearing sound, and it's just that. Leaving it at that without judgment, I don't like this sound, or that sounds a bus, that sounds a tractor, that sounds a tuk-tuk, just ignoring that, but just to say sound, ears, hearing sound. Just that. This is sufficient. We come back to the meditation object. But at first, yes, we do need to rehearse this ability to maintain focus on the meditation object in a quiet environment. So in answer to your question, I don't find it distracting at all. In fact, I don't notice it, other than when I try to make a video, or if I'm talking to people that come to see me, when I'm actually thinking from the other person's point of view. Is this noise disturbing them? And if somebody is visiting me, as is quite often the case now, and they're asking me a question, and it's not their English is not their first language, sometimes with the noise I'm having to really focus on what they're saying, their body language, to hear the question if it's quite noisy outside and they're quite quietly spoken. So that is when I notice it. When meditating for myself, then I'm used to meditating even in Thailand, in my kuti, all alone, just two other monks in a huge forest jungle on the mountainside. There was noise. You've heard the videos, you can hear the cicadas, the creatures in the background continuously. There is always sound. And even if we were to have no external sound whatsoever, light or smells or feelings of any, so pure sensory deprivation, all manner of disturbance would occur, if not more, in our minds. One way you can use external sound, noise, is to use it to bring you back into the moment. When it takes you out of your focus, recognize that sound has taken me away from my focus, but that is now, that is happening in this moment, and come back to your meditation object. So yes, the New York State Thruway through your head is in your head. It's not right outside the door. But if I was opening a meditation center or holding a meditation retreat, then I wouldn't choose it as the ideal place, no. But for most experienced practitioners, external environments shouldn't matter. It's what's inside that counts. So let me get back to the beginning. That was a warm-up for this difficult question, quite a long one, but this one did have a relevance within it, which I've highlighted. So someone expressed the view that the belief in Sri Lanka for some time now by monastics is that it is no longer possible to realize enlightenment. And you've also heard that Thai Ajahns have remarked on this. So I don't know in what respect or how they remarked on it. So I'm not. So let's just go back to the question. That somebody has suggested that the belief in Sri Lanka for some time now by monastics is that it is no longer possible to realize enlightenment. Okay, well, firstly, in whatever country, different countries, different monks in different monasteries of different traditions all have their own cultural influences and differences. Of course, there are the basic differences in traditions, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Zen, and within those many different segregated sects. Now, Essentially, however, we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, in that we regard the scriptures of the Buddha, the suttas, firstly in the Theravada tradition, the suttas, as being the word of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha, so therefore the Dharma with a capital D. Now that, and let's just sum that up for now as the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, and in amongst all of those thousands of teachings, 184,000 suttas and many, many more commentaries on that subsequently, but even in those core teachings, they're really only talking about, including the Vinaya Pitaka and the Sutta Pitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka being the way to live, really for monks and nuns, but it does relate directly to lay people in the sense of their interaction with the Sangha, but also in their own moral virtue, in Sila. And then the Sutta Pitaka, which is the teachings, the Dharma talks of the Buddha, his desanas, his ways of explaining the characteristics of existence, and his path of Sila, Samadhi, Panya, the Noble Eightfold Path. We should all be practicing this same thing. And historically, it's been with a view as monks and also lay people to becoming free from suffering in this lifetime, or to become content, to find happiness. Now, whether or not different monks here, different monks there, whole Sanghas even, believe or know or can disprove or prove that there are arahants, that is fully enlightened beings, monks and nuns who have attained to Nibbana, is neither here nor there. We shouldn't be worrying about other people's attainments. If you're hearing the teachings if the teachings are being conveyed to you well by a good teacher, then that is good enough. There are some very good teachers whom perhaps aren't necessarily great practitioners, and some very great practitioners who aren't necessarily very good teachers. Maybe, I don't know for sure, but it goes the same in all aspects of life. But when you live in the monastic life as a monk with fellow monks, or a nun with fellow nuns, you get to know whom are those monks, often that have been monks for a long time, or nuns that have been nuns for a long time, those that are of some attainment, some level of enlightenment, and there are 4 stages of enlightenment. So you can not necessarily place them, and these stages are irrelevant to some extent, but you certainly know when you're living with an unenlightened being, and it can often be sense that someone is very highly attained. Now, in that respect, I have to say I disagree if that's an actual factual point, that that there are monks that say you cannot be enlightened these days. It's no longer possible. I have to say that I don't agree with that. I've certainly met, lived with, been around monks of many vasas, that's many years in these robes, living in this form, who are very highly attained. I won't say particularly to what levels or who or anything like that, but I would think it's very rash to say that it's no longer possible to become enlightened. If it was no longer possible to become enlightened, I wouldn't be doing this. This would be a pointless exercise. But it's not logical, if you understand the teachings of the Buddha, to even think or say that it's no longer possible to become enlightened. Whether or not in this lifetime or future lifetimes, I'm not talking about that. We have an eternity of rebirths in Buddhist philosophy, if you call it that. We will be reborn, if not enlightened in this lifetime, to be given another opportunity. And we could go into the animal realms, where it could be, therefore, yes, very unlikely. But even so, eventually that isn't the end. There is always the potential. This is just the word of the Buddha I'm quoting, not my own views, my own ideas, and I haven't heard these views yet that you are mentioning in this quote. And you do say, I know there's not a lot you can say. So that's with regards to the rest of your comment, which I won't go into now anyway either. But essentially, I'm not staying in a monastery with other monks here, but if any monk was to come to me and say, you can't be enlightened, it's no longer possible, I would ask them, well, what are they doing? What is the point of this practice? Because to not be enlightened, it depends. If you aren't even able to attain to Sotapanna in this lifetime, or be putting in the causes and conditions, putting those in place for that to be attained in a future rebirth, then there is no point, and it is contrary to what the Buddha has taught us, shown us, demonstrated us, and told us how we can experience it for ourselves. So maybe I've spent a bit too long there on a comment that is not a genuine idea, but it isn't the first time I've heard that rumour, so I thought I'd cover it now. And then on that, I'm going to jump to another question, because it's kind of related, asking me then why and how I chose this tradition, blah, blah, blah. Now, I have gone into that in some detail in the Why I'm a Monk or How to Become a Monk videos, so I'm not going to say any more about that, other than suffice to say, having explored all of the traditions, the Theravada tradition in its raw form, so not taking any cultural influences, either Thailand, India, or this country, into account, just as we read it in the Vinaya Pitaka and the Sutta Pitaka, the Pali canon, that to me seemed not easy, it seemed realistic to be able to understand, practice, and required no belief in anything other than the technique, the opportunity to try it out for myself and experience it. All of the others added a little bit extra onto what it seemed to be, to me, to be the word of the Buddha. Theravada means way of the elders, really, and that is what it is. It's this sort of oldest path that we're following here, as the other traditions came along later on. That's a bit of a controversial thing to say, because it's not as simple as that at all, but these days one can look at it as this practice that you see with Theravada monks is pretty much in accordance with how the monks in the time of the Buddha lived, without anything added on. It's bringing it back to its lowest common denominator, which I kind of have always done with most things in my life, in order to then only add what is necessary, but take away all of the optional extras that aren't necessary to reaching the end goal. Oh, I've gone far again, I need to get back to the beginning. I hear invention, I think that's intention. I hear intention is the key that unlocks the rest. How would I strengthen my intention to take on life with all its issues, other than aja, to take on life with all its issues other and self. So for now, don't worry about other and self so much. How to strengthen intention. This Noble Eightfold Path begins with right view and then right intention. All of these 8 points of the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation, all support each other and link into each other. So by practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, you will strengthen intention. By simply keeping the 5 precepts, that being your intention, is good intention enough, because that will determine the rest of your intentions in all aspects of your life. If you refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and taking of intoxicants, anything else you intend to do based on that will be good intention. It's that simple. You keep sila. Then you will be able to practice samadhi, meditation well, and you will develop clear seeing and wisdom in your meditation, panya, sila, samadhi, panya, which sums up that entire Noble Eightfold Path. So anything that's part of the Noble Eightfold Path, like how do you develop right view? Well, again, same answer. You practice the whole of the Noble Eightfold Path. That component will become self-evident. Right, let me get in order. From your van life experience, oh dear. No, it's very relevant, my van life experience, because I had good time to practice living in a van for 3 years. What kind of food and supplies would you recommend prepare for a week-long solitary meditation and seclusion in the summer? And then you list a load of options. Okay, forget all your options you're listing there and stop thinking about food. You're going for a weeks-long meditation retreat in a van in the summer. That is fantastic. Anumodana sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Don't be worrying about all the food you're going to take. That's not going on a retreat. That's thinking about your feasting and picnics and satisfying your sensual desires. Now, whatever you normally eat, take, and whatever doesn't need much cooking preparation and it stores well, take that. It's only a week. If you just ate cream crackers for a week, you're not going to die. Or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I mean, I've survived on less for much longer. So don't be thinking about it. Don't have a shopping list. Take with you as little as you possibly can. No clothes, no accessories, take in the 8 precepts in your mind that you're not going to be eating in the afternoon, just eating some food in the morning. And then in terms of what we eat and what I, from my experience of van life, but also my experience of living anywhere outside and freely, when I say freely, without using money, so just getting what you can get and surviving, just survival, is you eat the staple of any country you're in. So if you're in Italy, you eat pasta. If you're in Asia, India or Thailand or here, this sort of staple is rice. If you're in European countries, it kind of varies, but in my country, the UK, England, I think the staple really there is potatoes or bread. I mean, bread also here because it's had so much colonial influences, both from Portugal, Holland and the UK and England, the English. So they have a lot of bread here. So you take the staple as your mainstay. So usually also the staple is easy to store, which is how it becomes the staple of any mainstay diet in any country. And it's usually the cheapest and it's usually in abundance. So if you live in Italy or even in the UK, get yourself a big sack of pasta. My experience in the UK was to always have a sack of potatoes, because you could buy a 5 kilogram sack of potatoes for under £1, and a big jar or packet of pasta. And if you need anything to go with that, some tinned tomatoes. You do refer to tinned foods, but not all of these different noodles and spams and tinned fruits, and don't worry about all that. That's just to try and satisfy your sensual desire. Tinned tomatoes are pretty much all that's in there is tomatoes, so they're quite good for you, and relatively cheap. So you could go to a local supermarket in the UK, even probably now, and buy those very, very cheap tinned tomatoes that they have, or very, very cheap baked beans, and live on those and a bit of pasta, some bread and some potatoes for years, let alone a week. So get the whole food out of your mind thing. But if you're going on a nice camping trip holiday and you want to really enjoy it like that, it's a sort of an Instagrammy thing, then that's up to you, whatever takes your fancy. But if it's to practice, to meditate, take as little as possible. So I was just reading some of the things. This is my second mail to you. I wonder if that means you've asked this question more than once. I don't know. Being a regular listener of your Dharma talks, I would like to know about soul in Buddhism. In a recent video, you could of you, I could hear that there is no soul in Buddhism. There is reincarnation of individual self, and if the self is not the soul, then what really will reincarnate according to Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy? That was quite a recent video, and you didn't actually hear it quite to the full. Maybe you saw one of the shorts, which do always say see full video on them, or you weren't listening 100% to it. I would never have said that there is reincarnation. We don't use that term in Buddhism, and we certainly don't have reincarnation of an individual self. We don't have individuals or selves, nor do we have a soul. That is correct. I mean, the difference between, we have chitta, which is like mind, and in the theistic religions or Abrahamic faiths or many religions, there is something like a soul, which has personal attributes like self, so a personality, and that is reborn into heaven or hell, lives for eternity. Well, in Buddhism there is no soul, and I would have qualified, if you listen to the rest of that video, I would have explained that in some detail, not just said there is no soul. What takes rebirth, what is reborn, not reincarnated, because reincarnation is that same being in terms of persona, a personality, being reincarnated. Reincarnated means reborn into another form, but the same personality, person, just the bodily aspects being new. That we don't have that in this tradition, this type of Buddhism. All that is going forward is our mind, our chitta, that awareness, that conscious awareness that knows, not this body, this personality. This body, this personality changes many times throughout this lifetime. It certainly doesn't continue the same in the next lifetime. So, I mean, is there an actual question there? So what really will reincarnate? So there, I think I've answered the question. What really will reincarnate according to Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy? Well, nothing reincarnates, but you continue. When this body dies, let's call it mind for simplicity. This mind, not the thinking brain or thinking mind we might attribute to that mind that is experiencing emotions, but that which knows. So when you're sad, you know you're sad. When you're happy, you know you're happy. That which knows you're happy isn't happy. That which knows you're sad isn't sad. That continues, but only in a smooth flow. You're reborn. It is reborn into another life, still knowing the form it's in, but it has no connection other than what actions you've done in the previous life will determine in which direction that mind, that chitta, as we call it, goes. But I mean, refer to the last video that you heard that in. I did explain it all in that. That's the one I should have left out. So this is a joyful video, Phra Dan, warm greetings. Seeing your hands in Anjali for us. Would you greet us like this again, as it is a blessing to see a monk doing this? Thank you. Okay, so hands in Anjali is like this, as you put on these little emojis they have of this. This is also how people greet each other in many Asian countries, like this, called Namaskar. In Thailand, it's like this, and they say hello to each other, it's like this. But actually monks do not greet people like this. So if I'm holding my hands in Anjali like this, it's to explain what that is, or it's when I'm chanting the words of the Buddha, or chanting, say, Namo Tassa Bhagavato, homage to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, or if I'm chanting blessings to you, then I hold my hands in Anjali like this. But monks, nuns, anyone in robes, does not hold their hands in Anjali when greeting or in any way to lay people. Only the other way round. Lay people should always hold their hands in Anjali when they're greeting and when they're asking a question or speaking to a monk. Now, this is to some extent, I suppose, convention, but it goes right back to the time of the Buddha. It's described in the suttas that the monks would sit to one side and hold their hands like this and bow 3 times and then ask the question of the Buddha like this, their teacher. Now, if I'm speaking to another monk, I would hold my hands in Anjali like this, unless they were my junior, in which case they would hold their hands in Anjali, and I would just not hold my hands like that. Now, that might seem hierarchical or whatever, but it's actually not. It's a very nice gesture. It gives you a very good feeling when you're talking to monks to hold your... I have the opportunity, because most monks are senior to me, to hold my hands in Anjali often, but it's quite frowned upon in Buddhist countries, as I've quite often done, out of habit, in fact, accidentally held my hand in Anjali to lay people when speaking, or said Anumodana or thank you like this, and just naturally gone like that. This is frowned upon. It's not the done thing. It makes them feel uncomfortable. So lay people like this to monks, no. They've said like that to me, other monks, when I've gone like that. So when I'm giving blessings in the morning, please watch my live videos every day. I hold my hands in Anjali for a long time, giving you blessings, wishing that we may all be happy and stay well and all good fortunes come to us. This is an appropriate time for me to be doing that. Other times it's a mistake, or I'm actually blessing something, doing something. Will you be staying in Sri Lanka for a while longer, do you think? If I were to ordain become a Buddhist monk, I would probably go to Sri Lanka myself to start my journey. I hope to stay in Sri Lanka and never have to move again. So, health conditions and all supportive factors being there and available, and visas and this and that, yes, I will be staying in Sri Lanka. That is my intention, to stay in Sri Lanka. And as regards to your other comment, that's probably why my mind went blank. The train was going by. So many people on that train. There may be less trains than normal today. So, I don't know where you are, what country you're in, but always look in your own country first. I mean, you don't have to be, this isn't a journey. The journey is within. You don't be going to the ends of the universe looking for Nibbana. Nibbana is within us. It has to just be uncovered. So the more you travel, the further you go, the more time you're taking away from the practice. Now, you can practice Sila, Samadhi, Panya anywhere. So if you're in a place and there's a monastery down the road, you go there, talk to the monks and ordain there. If eventually you end up in another country, that will be what happens. We don't choose this. We end up places, monks. I've ended up here after many other places, but it's never really been a plan or a choice. It's just the way things have gone. So I'm very happy that I'm here, and I really want to stay here. I've been trying to stay in one place ever since I began my journey, because I was trying to not have a journey. If I could have just stayed in my van and been ordained alone and on that place in England, I would have stayed there for the rest of my life. It was perfect. But this is not allowed in my country, for you to live permanently in a place in a van like that, and also people don't recognize this form and wouldn't necessarily support you. So, and also ordination wasn't possible like that. So my situation brought me here. Yours may also, but look in your own country first, wherever you may be. If not, then yes, you might have to move further afield. And as far as ordination is concerned, though, this is the bit you need to research, which is why you should always start near to home as possible, so that you can have a teacher to discuss this with and make arrangements with his contacts in other countries, so you go to a suitable place. This booking ordination online with some kind of what could you call it, I mean, this is like tourist Buddhism that's become a tourist version of becoming a monk. I've seen this, where you can, fill out a little registration form, they call you, and you go off to this place and you ordain as a monk for so long, and you can stay as a monk, there's no problem. But I'm not sure that that's really the way the Buddha would have seen it going. That is similar also to temporary ordination that they have in Buddhist countries like Thailand, Pabaja, where you take on this novice ordination or even bhikkhu ordination for a set amount of time. But that is with people who have grown up with Sila, Samadhi, Panya. They've grown up in a Buddhist culture. But for us Westerners whom it's new to, we need to learn that first in a monastic environment, living in a monastery as lay people, and only then can we ordain, after quite a lot of experience. And then it's a long time before you get higher ordination and become a bhikkhu. It's a long process, but anumodana and good luck and sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I hope you manage to ordain. Oh, thank you for all of that. I won't read it out loud, but who will look after you as you recover from your operation? So on now, it's in a couple of days I'm going to have a small operation, just a small repair job, and I think the recovery process, I've had the same operation before. I think I will be able to continue looking after myself as I do, but my tuk-tuk man, Kapia, Gamini, he's on hand always as he looks after me, and many other lay people here whom look after me if I should have any difficulty. So thank you for your concern. Many people are looking after me. I'm not ill, but even not ill, most of them don't know yet I'm going to go and have an operation. I'll have to explain, because they'll wonder where I've gone, why I'm not on Pindapat, why I'm not in my Vihara when they arrive. So I'll let everybody know quite quickly. There's a grapevine effect. I only need to tell a few people and they'll all tell each other that I won't be there for a day or one night, maybe 2 nights at most, I think. But then the recovery time, I'm hoping someone I can find. All I need to do is find someone to carry everything on Pindapat. I think it'll be okay for me to carry my bowl, Pindapat, and a little bit inside it, but no more than that. And at the moment I'm carrying huge amount of weight, which is really what sort of caused the problem to some extent. Well, it was going to happen anyway, but it's just sped it up. That I'm not going to be able to do. So I've made a few I've mentioned this to a few people, so I'll be able to just drop it off at places along the route if there's nobody to come along with me and actually literally carry it. And then maybe Gamini, Kapia, he can go and pick it up from those locations and bring it back to the Vihara for its subsequent distribution. So I won't hopefully need too much looking after, but thank you for your concern. I need looking after now. I'm being looked after very well as a healthy monks are very well looked after here. Somebody's learning and practicing, and the way you say it, you've got to tackle the 5th precept. So I'm guessing you're referring to you obviously like the odd drink or smoke or something from time to time. Yeah, you've got to tackle it. This practice is about that. There is no, well, I only have 1 glass of wine to unwind in the evening, or a joint here or a joint there. I'm afraid it's black and white. There are no intoxicants. It's the 5th precept. It tends to be relaxed in some cultures, and in some people's views is okay just to have a little. But this is about mindfulness, and there would be no point in taking these intoxicants if they didn't do that, intoxicate the mind. They wouldn't have that title, intoxicants. You say, right, I just take a nice 1 drink to take the edge off, to relax me. Well, this is the point of the practice, to do that, not to take the edge off, but to sharpen awareness, to see the truth, the reality clearly, understand it, and then it not affect you badly. Then you have equanimity. So there's no need to have the drink to soften the edges when you see that the edges, when you see them clearly, are no problem. They're just that, what they are. So I'm afraid, yeah, you do have to tackle that fifth precept. Have you experienced dreaming differently since ordaining as a monk versus your lay life? Since meditating more, I have better sleep and my dreaming seems to be more in my control and I'm aware of them as dreams. Yet I also forget them or let them go much more easily upon waking. I'm wondering if the Buddha was able to practice mindfulness during his sleep. Okay, so I don't know about whether the Buddha was able to practice mindfulness during his sleep, because he's a Buddha. So I would say yes, I should think so. But anyone else is not mindful when they're asleep. In fact, Buddha means awake as opposed to asleep. It simply means the awakened one, or awake. Now, the only time we're not mindful is in our sleep, which is why monks, we don't sleep much, because we're not mindful in our sleep. The whole point of it is we're asleep. But we can be mindful right up until the moment of going to sleep, and then develop the skill to be have mindfulness as quickly as possible upon awakening. Now, you're quite right. The more you practice meditation, the more you allow this mind to develop this sort of samatha of tranquility, peace and calm quality, you will dream less. All dreaming is just trying to tidy up the mind from all of the goings on in the day, the thinking process, the worries about the future, the concerns of the past, all of this going on in your busy lives. It's just dealing with everything, our brain's way of trying to figure it all out, but it often creates this jumble of dreams and perhaps even exacerbates the problem to some extent and causes you not to be able to sleep well. But this does, with meditation, certainly settle down. Now, I can't remember the last time I dreamed of anything, had any dreams. Certainly, yes, since I've been meditating, which is a long time, I found that I didn't dream anymore. But I don't try to be mindful in my sleep, because I know you can't be. But I do try to notice the last breath and the first breath. It's kind of a breath is a mantra to me, not in a word like way mantra, but I'm not awake until I've noticed that first breath, obviously like that. I might stumble and hello and or push the alarm, sort of sit up, whatever, and then that's it, mindfulness begins now. Yes. And when going to sleep, you'll doze off to your last breath, if you were counting the breaths or something like that. So then somebody asks, please explain to us, choose about sleep again. It's further on, so I'll have to come to that another time, that question, I think. Would you please explain to us how you choose it? This is the tradition. Would you please explain how I chose this tradition? I've already answered that, haven't I? Right, do you feel shame when indulging in too much mindless thinking? No. Firstly, I try not to indulge in too much mindless thinking. And if I was to start thinking away about this and that and nonsense about the future and regrets of the past, which is all irrelevant, and not be in the present moment, I certainly wouldn't feel shame, and we don't have this really word shame so much or guilt, let's say, in Buddhism. We have hiri and ottappa, which I refer to as conscience and conscientiousness, which are our guardian angels. They protect us from going off the path, keeping our sila. This is how they're buffers either side of the road. Conscience and conscientiousness. Yes, so with a conscience we wouldn't do wrong, so we wouldn't waste our time thinking mindlessly, and conscientiousness keeps us from doing that. So that's a good way of explaining these terms, hiri and ottappa, Pali words which are often translated as wise sense of shame and regret for doing wrong. But I just simplify it in my own mind as this conscience and conscientiousness. So yeah, I mean, I don't feel shame, because I try not to do that. And if I did it, I'd think, well, why were you wasting your time? It's not so. Shame has its deep connotation. So no. Unless I misunderstood, I think you said Ajahn Chah attained arahantship in his lifetime. If monks aren't supposed to speak about their attainments, how do we know this? So that's quite correct. Monks aren't allowed to speak of their attainments. Well, we know this, like I was saying before, from the monks that were living with Ajahn Chah, whom are able to, certainly after his death, tell us of his attainments. And they are only too willing and happy to share that. That is okay, and that is how we know. And the only way you can really know if an arahant or even a sotapanna has reached this level of attainment, I say even, that's a very high level of attainment, is by living with them. So we rely on monks and disciples of these highly attained meditation masters, or Krubarajans as they call them in Thailand, but very attained monks. We rely on their disciples that have lived with them for a long time to really get to know what it's like being around such a person, the difference between them and other people. And by this way we know that these claims are very justified and very real, and is also evident from the teachings that remain behind from these highly attained practitioners, whom wouldn't be able to offer in the first place or leave such wise words and teachings and depths of understanding to help us in our practice if they weren't themselves already highly attained. So this is how we know, without them saying, hey, I'm an arahant, because that is not allowed, no. So I'll finish up with this last question. So I don't let the sound bother me or go out to the sound. I allow the sound to just pass, knowing it's sound arising and sound passing away. Are you able to comment on the Diamond Sutra? I'm not sure if it belongs to another sect. Yes, it belongs to another tradition. It's a Mahayana, I think, tradition sutta, and so I'm afraid I can't comment. I don't know anything much about it. So, so I think that'll, yeah, the Diamond Sutta. It's like the Heart Sutta, the Diamond Sutta. You know, these are like the core suttas that are often quoted in Mahayana Buddhism. And that covers also some of the sort of Tibetan, Vajrayana and other traditional aspects of the northern schools of Buddhism. And I'm from the southern schools of Buddhism. Southern being Theravada in this sort of Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, and then out to Laos and Cambodia region of the world. And going north from that and out to China, it becomes Mahayana, encompassing all of the other traditions that you may have heard of. And they're more, they use the Sanskrit language as opposed to the Pali language, and they include the Diamond Sutta and the Heart Sutta and these kinds of things. So, once again, I wish you a very happy and fruitful in your practice, healthy New Year and many New Years to come. And that you do in this lifetime manage to become free from suffering, attaining to Nibbana, but happily travelling along this path, this Noble Eightfold Path along the way. So many blessings to you with metta, a very, very happy 2024. Thank you for watching. I hope there is something useful there. If so, please use it. If not, then you can just let it go. Sukhi Hotu, be happy and stay well.